news. No, it's not Juan Soto yet. Welcome into an emergency edition of Fantasy Baseball today on Saturday night, December 7th. I am Frank Sanford, joined by Chris Towers. Today on the show, we had some big news come out here on Saturday. Willy Adames signed a massive deal to the San Francisco Giants, and Tyler O'Neill to the Orioles, as well as Gary Sanchez. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the big news here, Chris, Willy Adames to the Giants on a 7-year, $182 million deal, the largest in Giants history. First big move made by Buster Posey since he's taken over the team. But Willy Adames had a career year and a contract year. He was awesome. 32 home runs, 112 RBI, 21 steals, finished as the 19th overall player in Roto. He was the 14th best hitter in head-to-head points. Truly an awesome season, and I'm genuinely happy for the Giants. I mean, they've tried the past couple off seasons to bring in some big talent. Willy Adames, okay, not on the level of an Aaron Judge, a Shohei Ohtani, but he's a pretty good get. Let's talk about how this actually affects his fantasy value, though, because on paper, it's a pretty big park downgrade. It's a pretty big lineup downgrade, and on top of that, the Giants didn't really run that much this past season. So talk to me about Willy Adames to the Giants, his fantasy value.
Yeah, that's the running is, I think, the big thing that's going to be tough to figure out because, one, Willy Adames had never been a big stolen base guy before last year. He stole 21 bases on 25 attempts. Before that, his career high was 8 steals on 11 attempts, career high in both categories. So I don't know. Like it was weird because we saw Matt Chapman suddenly become a 15 stolen base guy. Which he was another guy who his career high was 4 before this. So that seems like a good sign. He was second on the team with 15. Third was Elliot Ramos with 6. They only stole 68 bases as a team. So that's one where you could look at the Matt Chapman part of it and say, all right, he joined this team. All of a sudden he starts running a lot more, but nobody else on the team really ran much. You know, even like Tyro Estrada, who has been a pretty solid stolen base threat in the past, 4 stolen base attempts last year in 96 games. So I'm not 100% sure what it means. I think I would feel somewhat comfortable expecting like 15-ish steals from Willy Adames, but I'm not sure how much more. And, you know, you said park downgrade. I don't know. If you look at the StatCast factors for the past 3 years, Oracle Park is right behind American Family Field, Miller Park. To those of you who I don't really like, I don't even know when that change happened. So it's still Miller Park to me. I tend to stick with those things for a long time, but it is a downgrade for power for sure. I think probably less so for a right-handed hitter because left-handed hitters tend to do really well with home runs in Milwaukee and not so well in San Francisco. But I think even for right-handed hitters, it's a pretty big downgrade between moving from Milwaukee to San Francisco. And Willy Adames is one of those guys who's got like good quality of contact metrics, not really elite quality of contact metrics. He's like 82nd percentile in X slug last year, 81st in barrel rate, actually hard hit rate, average exit velocity a little lower. Not a guy who super maximizes his swing for pull in the air. So I think on the whole, one, nobody should have expected Willy Adames to replicate what he did last season because it was a career year. It was a contract year, career high in home runs, career high in RBI, had MLB record, I think 13 3-run home runs is the stat that we've thrown around a lot. So we were expecting a step back either way. But a shortstop who gives you 25 plus home runs and 15 stolen bases, probably hits 3rd or 4th in the lineup. Like that's probably still a very solid starter. It's just certainly not a best case scenario for Willy Adames' fantasy value, I think.
Yeah, if you look at the Steamer projections, they seem pretty fair. 240 batting average, 26 home runs, 84 RBI, 13 steals, and that's before this move. So maybe they'll tweak that a little bit. That comes out as an $11 player in a 12-team league. I feel like that sounds pretty good for Willy Adames. Look, he made some improvements this past season. There's no doubt about it. You know, raised the launch angle, hit a bunch of fly balls to the pull side, which obviously plays well for power. And while he doesn't hit the ball all that hard, you brought that up. The barrel rate, 81st percentile, like he finds a way to get the most out of it, right? When he puts the ball in the air and hits it to the pull side. Mention the park factors, specifically for right-handed power, home run factor for righties. He's going from the 6th best ballpark in American Family Field all the way down to 28th.
Yeah.
Oracle Park. So, look, I think there was going to be natural regression anyway. I don't want to pin this all on Oracle Park because I think the most likely scenario is he was going to take a decent sized step back anyway. But someone that could be a viable player. I just think we shouldn't expect anything close to what Willy Adames did last season.
And I have him ranked a little lower than his ADP right now. His ADP is right around 70. I had him 85th before the trade. The thing is, when you look at the shortstop rankings, one, I do have Bo Bichette ranked higher than Willy Adames, which the ADP definitely does not have. There's about 70, 80 spots between them.
Bo Bichette is going to wind up being one of the most polarizing players this
We talked about that, I think, earlier this week, and Scott and I are both much higher on Bo Bichette than the consensus, but I don't really have any room to move Willy Adames at shortstop because I have Bo Bichette ahead of him. This certainly doesn't move Willy Adames up. I have Matt McLain next, and in the overall rankings, I have 45 spots between them, so it's certainly not that big of a downgrade for Willy Adames. So I think Adames is going to be around the 90th player for me, between 80 and 90 when we officially unveil rankings. Where it specifically ends up, I'm not 100% sure, but it's a move where you can certainly understand why the Giants did it, right? That this is a team that has been looking to make a splash in free agency. I would guess they're still going to try, maybe a Corbin Burns or something like that. I would think they're still going to be in play for, but really shores up the left side of the infield on defense. There was a couple of reports this week. I don't know if you saw that, like they were in on Alex Bregman, and if they signed him, Matt Chapman might have moved to shortstop, which would have been weird. This makes much more sense. This is a much more logical way to spend that money. So I get it from the Giants' perspective. I still have a lot of questions about what the long-term vision and long-term goal is there, and what Buster Posey is going to do as the president of baseball operations. But, from a fantasy perspective, I think this one is pretty straightforward. A slight downgrade for Willy Adames, but doesn't really dramatically change the way I view him overall. I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and you mentioned the early ADP. It's right around pick 65. So the 6th round of a 12-team league. And Willy Adames kind of represents this island in shortstop ADP where he's about 20 picks behind CJ Abrams, but he's also 50 picks ahead of Matt McLain. So similar to your rankings there where, Willy Adames is kind of right in the middle. My guess is he probably moves down a little bit with this move, probably closer to pick 75 for Willy Adames, which I think is okay.
It's fine. I probably will have him lower than that, but I get it. It depends on how bullish you want to be on the stolen bases in particular. Because if he can go 30-20 again, that's a hugely valuable player, obviously.
Yeah, I think I would personally expect
take the under on both.
Yeah, I would expect like 10 to 12 steals, I think, and 25-ish home runs, which again is, solid player. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we will talk about Tyler O'Neill, who signed with the Orioles. We'll do that right after this.
Historic rivals with unforgettable seasons meet in a game of honor. The Army-Navy game presented by USAA, December 14th on CBS.
Welcome back in. Tyler O'Neill signed with the Orioles on a 3-year, $49.5 million deal that includes an opt-out after the first year. And he is 29 years old, just had a really strong season with the Red Sox. He hit 241, 31 home runs, and 847 OPS. He did all of that in just 113 games. He averaged 3 fantasy points per game. That was tied for 15th among outfielders. And the power is still incredibly real, Chris. 270 ISO, ranked 5th among hitters with 450 plate appearances this past season. But like Willy Adames, I feel like there's a slight downgrade here in the least because he's going from the green monster in Fenway to, an altered Baltimore here in Camden Yards. We know that they're expected to pull the walls in closer to home plate, but my guess is it's still not going to be as good as hitting in Fenway Park. So what are your thoughts on Tyler O'Neill to the Orioles?
Yeah, one interesting thing is that if you look at the expected home runs via StatCast, Actually, not a big difference between Baltimore and Boston. Some of that is the pre-2022 when they moved the fences in. But even over the past 3 seasons with the fences out in Baltimore, the difference between Baltimore and Boston comes out to about 8 home runs over 3 years, which is not nothing, but it's not as dramatic a shift as you would expect, especially when you have to account for the fact that they are moving the fences in somewhat, trying to create, it was 2 hitter friendly according to the Orioles before. It became 2 pitcher friendly, which everybody knew when they announced that they were moving their fences back 30 feet. I'm not sure why they seemed caught off guard by that, but yeah, I think it'll probably play closer to neutral. Boston is a pretty hitter friendly park for right-handers, so it's a downgrade. But I think the bigger thing here is just, I don't really understand what the Orioles' plan is right now. Like this is one where it feels like there are 3 more moves coming. And they already also signed Gary Sanchez to an $8.5 million 1-year contract. So
that doesn't really sound like backup catcher.
That is backup catcher. Like Kyle Higashioka got what, 2 for 17, I think it was.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like
what did Danny Jansen get? But I guess he's going to be a starter, right?
I think that was like 110.
Yeah.
1 for 10, something like that. So like, it's but like with how much Adley Rutschman plays and always has played, you've got to figure this gums up the works at DH in some way. Not to say Gary Sanchez is going to be a full-time DH or anything, but if he catches 35 games and starts 15 to 20 at DH, or Adley Rutschman starts 20, whatever the combination is, I think this does shift some plate appearances over to the DH spot where, you already have between DH and catcher a pretty crowded situation in Baltimore. You've got, Ryan Mountcastle, who I think we all expect a little better from with the fences moving in, because it feels like the fences being moved out hurt him more than anybody. But you've got Ryan O'Hearn at DH. You've got Keston Kierstad, who was supposed to be part of the corner outfield conversation. Kobe Mayo, not necessarily a corner outfielder, although I think there's a chance he gets some reps there at times. But this also kind of muddies the water for him, because I think the one thing Baltimore had a surplus of before signing Tyler O'Neill was just corner guys, first, third, left, right. And now they've got another one. And with Gary Sanchez in, that creates, at least some new competition for DH plate appearances. So I look at it all, and it looks like a team that is still a long way from having their final 2025 roster set, which makes sense. It's December 7th as we're recording. But I also thought this was a team, after trading for Corbin Burns, that still had a move left last year. And they did end up making a couple of moves at the deadline to go get Zach Eflin, go get Trevor Rogers. But I just don't understand what Baltimore, like the balance between short-term and long-term thinking. It still feels like there's too much like trying to straddle the line. And it's like, no, you're a contender right now. This is the moment. And I don't know if it's a Kobe Mayo trade for Garrett Crochet, moving Heston Kierstad. That's the correct order.
Yes.
Of, okay. That's one of those ones I always stumble on. Whether it's moving him for exactly. Cedric Mullins is an impending free agent at the end of the year. So it feels like there's still a lot left for this Baltimore Orioles team to do. And the only thing is I don't know if I have faith in them to make the next moves, or at least right now, certainly I don't know what the next moves are.
Mm-hmm. Garrett Crochet just makes so much sense, man. I don't want to say like they have a surplus of prospects, obviously, and young players. And I don't think you should just give those players away, but getting 2 years of service time from Garrett Crochet, and whoever trades for him, I assume is going to sign him to an extension as well. Although maybe I shouldn't assume that if it's the Orioles. It just feels like it makes so much sense. They have so many hitters, and they obviously could use another frontline starter. I don't think that
honestly, I think 2.
I don't think they're going to bring back Corbin Burns. Like, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it doesn't seem that way as of now. So, yeah, Garrett Crochet would make so much sense going to the Orioles. Looking back at their lineup, just trying to figure out, as of now, whose playing time is the safest. The fact that they just played Tyler O'Neill, like, he's probably the safest.
You got to think so, yeah. I mean,
he's going to play a bunch. And then you have Colton Cowser, who, was one of the best rookies in the American League this past season. I feel like he's going to play every day. I think they need Cedric Mullins' defense in center field, though. Cowser could play there as well. Then at DH, you have Ryan O'Hearn. You still have Ryan Mountcastle. It made so much sense to give someone like Heston Kjerstad a shot here, unless they don't have confidence in him. But
the bigger thing for me is just there is nowhere for Kobe Mayo to play right now.
Yeah, I was going to say third base, but now, they have Westberg at third.
Either there is nowhere for Jackson Holliday to play, or there is nowhere for Kobe Mayo to play. And look, Jackson Holliday looked overmatched enough last year that I think it would be reasonable to go into next season not planning on him being in the everyday lineup, but he was down the stretch. He was the guy who was playing, not Kobe Mayo, who I think started 6 of the final 25 games after getting called up at the end of last season. So it's frustrating because Kobe Mayo, still one of the top prospects in baseball, has played 151 very good games at AAA, got 46 plate appearances in the majors last year, and it just doesn't seem like there's any, strong lean towards giving him playing time. And I don't quite understand what the holdup is there. Maybe there's something that we're not seeing. Maybe there's something with the makeup or the defense. I don't know, but it seems like this is a team that still needs to consolidate. And this is a team that still needs to focus less on long-term goals and, we can't give up on a Jackson Holliday or we can't give up on a Kobe Mayo or whatever it is. It does seem like they need to make another Corbin Burns trade. And honestly, you look at the rotation right now and it's like Zach Eflin, okay, that's a fine number 2 or number 3 starter. Grayson Rodriguez, still like the upside, but right now seems more like a number 2 or number 3 who, has had missed significant time in 2 of the last 3 seasons now. And then it's Dean Kramer, Albert Suarez, Trevor Rogers. I guess Kyle Bradish might be back at the end of the summer. Maybe John Means is back by the end, but I feel like they're 2 starters away from being where this team should be. And I felt they were another starter away after trading for Corbin Burns last year. And I thought they were going to make that move because they gave up so little for Corbin Burns, right? It was Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. And it felt like, oh, they're set to make another big splash, and they just never did it. So I'm very confused about what the short-term plan for Baltimore is. I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles around it, but it's because I just look at it and I don't understand what the goal is.
They kind of treated Trevor Rogers like that was the big pitcher move, even though it clearly was not.
And look,
even at the time, we kind of figured, we were like, what are the Orioles doing? They gave up Connor Norby, who, in a small sample, he looked like a pretty damn good player with the Marlins last season. So
yeah, and look, I think Trevor Rogers, they've already talked about, he's going to Driveline to try to build his velocity back up. He, was sitting 94, 95 at when he was a Rookie of the Year contender with the Marlins. He was down to like 91, 92 last year. So that did feel like a long-term view move, not a, hey, this is a guy we can slot in our rotation and be a difference maker in the second half. It never felt like that to me. Maybe that was just because I watched a lot of Trevor Rogers and he hadn't been that guy in a couple of years. I don't know, but maybe they're really confident that they can build him back up this offseason and he can be that number 2 guy or number 3 guy. But even so, that still gives you 2 young starters in Grayson Rodriguez and Trevor Rogers who have not been able to stay on the mound the past couple of years consistently. Zach Eflin has a pretty long injury track record of his own. It's more lower body stuff for him historically than arm, but still concerning that he, not a guy that you can necessarily count on for 30 starts. So I don't, something's missing, and we've got 4-ish months, 3 3/4 months until opening day. There's plenty of time for the Orioles to do something, but I'm confused by what the approach, what the thought process is here. And look, Tyler O'Neill's a fine player.
Yeah.
And given his injury track record, has only played more than 115 games once in a major league season. Maybe they also can't count on him to stay healthy, and they need to count on, him missing some time and giving him some time off. And 3 years, $49.5 million is not such an onerous deal that if he's a, 80% of the time player, it's probably fine, but it just didn't feel like what this team needed, And that's the thing I keep getting hung up on, is just like Willy Adames to the Giants makes perfect sense. They needed a shortstop. They don't think Tyler Fitzgerald's a long-term answer there. Great. That makes sense. You got a great left side of the infield for the next 5 years. The Orioles, I'm just super confused, and there's got to be a consolidation trade coming. That's the only thing that makes sense about their roster.
Last question on Tyler O'Neill. The early ADP for him is 190.4. That makes him the 45th outfielder off the board. He's going just after Kerry Carpenter, just ahead of names like Taylor Ward and Elliot Ramos. What are your thoughts on the price tag for Tyler O'Neill?
I think that's fine. I have him a little higher than that. I have him 151 at outfielder 41, but not a big difference. Still has big time power. In 130 games, he hit 31 homers last year.
Yeah.
I don't expect that pace to continue, but all the underlying numbers still suggest he hits the ball super hard. He's a super strong guy. He's got great bat speed, all that. We kind of know what Tyler O'Neill is at this point, and it's a volatile profile, but I think one that helps any team. It's just, does he help Baltimore all that much, given what their alternatives are? I don't really see it.
Yeah, and I would say this all but guarantees that Anthony Santander will not be back with the Orioles this offseason. So whichever team misses out on Juan Soto could be in on Santander, or some other team. I know the Blue Jays are really trying to make a splash this offseason, so perhaps that could make some sense for Santander as well. Last thing I'll add on Tyler O'Neill, he did hit 241 this past season. The XBA was 218.
Yeah.
Plate discipline, it's gotten pretty bad. 33.6% strikeout rate, zone contact, and swinging strike rate, both pretty bad. So there is potential for some really bad batting average, but I do think the power is still very legit.
Well, and
Tyler O'Neill.
I mean, you got to keep in mind, we've seen 2 very good seasons from Tyler O'Neill. He's also 30, about to turn 30, turns 30 next year.
29, yeah. He'll turn 30 in June.
And again, has played more than 115 games once, has an OPS over 722 3 times technically, but one of them was in 2018 as a rookie in 61 games. So it's also a pretty volatile skill set. So, I think as a number 4 outfielder, where, we've talked a lot in the drafts we've done so far this year that it's a lot easier to find speed than power in the mid to late rounds of drafts. He is a source of power. It's just there's a reason he's available in the middle rounds when a lot of guys who could hit 40 home runs typically are not available.
Yeah. My early read is it's probably a fade. I think both guys right now at cost are probably a fade, Willy Adames and Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah.
But if they drop down a little bit, maybe that creates a buying opportunity for those 2 names. Quick check. Juan Soto has not signed yet, but it sounds like it could be done any minute this weekend.
Mets and Yankees apparently have upped their offers over $700 million now, which is pretty bonkers.
It's a dream come true for both him and Scott Boras, man. You get the New York teams bidding against each other, and man, magic will happen in that contract whenever that is revealed. My guess is sometime this weekend, probably tomorrow. The winter meetings start up, and maybe they,
I think I'm going to the movies tomorrow at 1:00, so that might be the exact moment actually when it happens.
I have a family birthday party from like 2 to 6 p.m.
Oh,
so
excellent! Oh yeah, right in that window.
It's absolutely going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, like 1:55.
Yeah,
I think will be the time.
We did have some pitching moves in the past couple of days as well, but we will save those for next week. But Luis Severino to the A's. I mean, who would have thunk it, right? Biggest guaranteed contract given out in A's history. All they had to do was moving to a minor league ballpark to start spending money, which is...
I saw someone reference the time that the Marlins got bullied by the MLBPA into giving Josh Johnson an extension. This is 12 years ago now, maybe more, but that's what it felt like. It was like, you got to act like a real franchise. And so, yeah, give Luis Severino a 3-year deal, whatever. I saw a chart of like the most guaranteed money that any team has given out to, every team has given out to a free agent. And like somehow 7 teams have given out less guaranteed money than this Luis Severino trade, including, I want to point out, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who the largest free agent contract they've ever given out, I believe, was a 2-year, $17 million deal to Russell Martin.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Pirates, you're next, man. I mean, if the A's are out here spending money,
I mean, the Marlins, the Pirates actually like really should be spending. They should be playing in free agency right now with
have to maximize
with the pitching core they have right now. Yeah,
you have to maximize Paul Skeens while you have him, under team control for as long as you do.
That could be a really good rotation this year.
100%. They have prospects coming too, man. Bubba Chandler, Thomas Harrington. That is a really, really fun, young, exciting team if they can, bring in some offense as well. Shane Bieber went back to the Guardians. He is recovering from Tommy John. Should be back sometime around the All-Star break. Clay Holmes went to the Mets as a starter, so that will be interesting to talk about. Could maybe be a serviceable spark sometime in 2025, but we will talk about those moves next week. We are going to wrap there. For Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball Today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again on Tuesday, but honestly, probably sooner to talk about Juan Soto. Bye-bye.